Jaya Radha Madhava Bandha Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Bandha Vihari Jaya Gopal Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopal Vallabha Girivardhari Asuranandana Bhajandaranjana Asuranandana Bhajandaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopidana Vallabha Girivardhari Asuranandana Bhajandaranjana Asuranandana Bhajandaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Swami Savajikata Shishima Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Govinda Ki Jai Gondra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gopal. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to Shigu and Shiguranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 22, Text number 6. This conversation between Kadama Muni and Swayambhuva Manu. Dishya me Bhagavan Dristo Dudasho yo kritatmanam Dishya pada rajasvistam Shishna me bhavata shivam Dishya me Bhagavan Dristo Dudasho yo kritatmanam Dishya pada rajasvistam Shishna me bhavata shivam Dishya me Bhagavan Dristo Dudasho yo kritatmanam Dishya pada rajasvistam Shishna me bhavata shivam Dishya me Bhagavan Dristo Dudasho yo kritatmanam Dishya pada rajasvistam Shishna me bhavata shivam Dishya me Bhagavan Dristo Dudasho yo kritatmanam Dishya pada rajasvistam Shishna me bhavata shivam Dishya me Bhagavan Dristo Dudasho yo kritatmanam Dishya pada rajasvistam Shishna me bhavata shivam. Ladies. Dishya, by good fortune, may my Bhagavan, all-powerful, Dishya is seen, Dudasha, not easily seen, Yaha, who, akritatmanam, of those who have not controlled the mind and senses. Dishya, by my good fortune, padarajaha, the dust of the feet, spristam, is touched, shishna, by the head, me, my, bhavataha, your, shivam, causing all auspiciousness. Translation purpose Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: it is my good fortune that I have been able to see you, for you cannot easily be seen by persons who have not subdued the mind or controlled the senses. I am all the more fortunate to have touched with my head the blessed dust of your feet. So this is Manu speaking to Kadama Muni, offering prayers. Srila Prabhupada's purport: the perfection of transcendental life can be achieved simply by touching the holy dust of the lotus feet of a holy man. In the Bhagavatam it is said, Mahat Padarajo Bhishekam, which means to be blessed by the holy dust of the lotus feet of a Mahat, or great devotee. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Mahatmanas too, those who are great souls are under the spell of spiritual energy, and their symptom is that they fully engage in Krishna consciousness for the service of the Lord. Therefore, they are called Mahat. Unless one is fortunate enough to have the dust of the lotus feet of a Mahatma on one's head, there is no possibility of perfection in spiritual life. The Parampara system of disciplic succession is very important as a means of spiritual success. One becomes a Mahat by the grace of his Mahat spiritual master. If one takes shelter of the lotus feet of a great soul, there is every possibility of one's also becoming a great soul. When Maharaj Rahugana asked Jad Bharat about his wonderful achievement of spiritual success, he replied to the king that spiritual success is not possible simply by following the rituals of religion, or simply by converting oneself into a sannyasi, or offering sacrifices as recommended in the scriptures. These methods are undoubtedly helpful for spiritualization, but the real effect is brought about by the grace of a Mahatma. In Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's 8 stanzas of the prayers to the spiritual master, that's the Mangaladi prayers we sing, it is clearly stated that simply by satisfying the spiritual master, one can achieve the supreme success in life, and in spite of executing all ritualistic performances, if one cannot satisfy the spiritual master, one has no access to spiritual perfection. Here the word akritatmanam is very significant. Atma means body, soul, mind, and akritatma means the common man who cannot control the senses or the mind. Because the common man is unable to control the senses and the mind, it is his duty to seek the shelter of a great soul or a great devotee of the Lord and just try to please him. That will make his life perfect. A common man cannot rise to the topmost stage of spiritual perfection simply by following the rituals and religious principles. He has to take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and work under his direction faithfully and sincerely. Then he becomes perfect without a doubt. So Prabhupada is quoting and paraphrasing Bhagavad Gita 9:13, Mahatmanas tu mamprata daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajanti yanya manaso jnanatva utadam avyayam. So, O son of Pritha, so Krishna speaking to Arjuna, O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. And just a little bit from the purport, Prabhupada comments that the guidance of the spiritual nature is called Devi Prakriti, divine nature. So when one is promoted in that way by surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one attains to the stage of great soul, Mahatma. They meditate only upon Krishna and Krishna consciousness. They are always engaged in the unswerving service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness. The Mahatma has no material agenda and has nothing material to offer to others. Therefore, for a materialistic person, the Mahatmas are very difficult to approach. Of course, we're sometimes familiar with this word Mahatma coming from Mahatma Gandhi. He was giving this label Mahatma. And, to some degree, perhaps he was, he chanted the name of Ram and, he was sattvic in his life in different ways. But he was also, Prabhupada would criticize him. He's using the Bhagavad Gita for his political activities. And indeed, Srila Prabhupada did write a letter to Mahatma Gandhi and said, you should assist me in preaching the message of Bhagavad Gita all over the world. Give up this politics. If you don't give up this politics, your I forget exactly what he said, but basically your life may come to a violent end or similar. And sometime later, we know that Mahatma Gandhi, he was assassinated by his own bodyguard. So whether Mahatma Gandhi actually got the letter or not, I'm not sure, but Srila Prabhupada, he was very much aware that this Bhagavad Gita was being misused for political agendas rather than Krishna's message itself, that just presenting the Krishna's message as it is, Bhagavad Gita as it is. So Prabhupada also mentions in this purport about, I won't jump ahead too far. So where Prabhupada says in the purport that it is very difficult for a common man to take shelter. So a common man cannot rise to the topmost stage of spiritual perfection simply following, rituals and, religious sort of rituals and rites. Manu, he tells Kadama Muni that you cannot easily be seen by persons who have not subdued the mind or controlled the senses. So we can use the example of when King Prataparuja, he was the king of Puri, when Lord Chaitanya was there, and he was constantly asking the servants of Lord Chaitanya that if he could get darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but Chaitanya was constantly refusing to allow that to happen. He was saying that I have no business seeing a pound, shilling, pence man. In other words, he had no business seeing a king. But despite that, King Prataparuja, he was very much a devotee, and he was constantly imploring Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Swarup Damodar and others that somehow or other I want to take darshan of Lord Chaitanya. So the Rath Yatra festival was coming up. So King Prataparuja, as was the custom, he was engaged in sweeping the road in front of the Rath cart. So taking the humble position of a servant, just sweeping the road in front of Jagannath and the other carts. And it was also arranged somehow or other that when Lord Chaitanya, after Rath Yatra, took rest in the Kundincha Gardens, and just behind like some sort of wall, King Prataparuja, in disguise, he'd taken off his royal regalia and he was just in disguise as a common person. He started chanting mantras from the Bhagavatam. And Lord Chaitanya, hearing that, he was, yes, go on. He was complete ecstasy hearing Bhagavatam. And it was understood that actually Lord Chaitanya had given his blessings to King Prataparuja when he saw him sweeping in front of the Rath cart. Even as the king, he was taking that humble position. So in this way, not because he was a king, but because he was taking the humble position as a servant of Lord Chaitanya. So in this way, King Prataparuja's desires were fulfilled. And so, so basically the purport to this verse is that simply by when we hear about taking the dust of the lotus feet, in other words, inquiring humbly, serving the saintly person in so many ways. It can be literally or figuratively taking shelter at the lotus feet of a great soul. So we know that story. You may remember, I think it's mentioned Prabhupada Lilamrita, that Prabhupada was on a plane. There's some devotees with him. There's devotees that set out his lunch he was taking, and one of the air hostesses just sort of whimsically took something of Prabhupada's plate and ate it. she just thought it was a bit of a joke, and anyway, Prabhupada, okay, what to do. And but it's interesting that sometime later, devotees were traveling, I can't remember what country, somewhere in South America, and they were just going door to door selling books. And anyway, one devotee knocked on the door, and this lady opened, and she was dressed in a sari with tilak, and he looked behind, there was a very nice altar and Prabhupada's books there, and she explained that actually she was the air hostess who took some prasad of Prabhupada's plate, and just by doing that, she became inspired and purified to actually take up a life of devotional service. That's quite amazing. So, and Prabhupada mentions also King Rahugana and Jad Bharat. So it's a long story, but very briefly, Jad Bharat, he was a very saintly person, but he acted like a dullard. Like Jad means foolish, or like a bit of an idiot type that. But he was doing that because he didn't want to interact with general society. He just wanted to be left alone. And at one time, the king Rahugana Maharaj was coming along with his palanquin. There's four strong men carrying the palanquin, and somehow or other one of the carriers become disabled, wasn't able to continue, and the king's officers saw Jad Bharat. He was like very strong, and he was sort of conscripted into carrying Maharaj Rahugana's palanquin. And but because Jad Bharat, even though he looked very foolish, he was actually very compassionate to all living entities. So when he was walking along, there was ants in the way, so he was sort of jumping around and going here and there, and a very rough ride for the king. And so the king started chastising Jad Bharat, said, "You're a foolish person, can't you even carry a palanquin?" So he abused Jad Bharat in so many different ways. And then Jad Bharat, not being disturbed, he very humbly said, "I'm not foolish, I'm not this, I'm not that." He just responded to all the different, accusations of the king. And the king said, "Oh, what are you saying? Put me down, put me down." He said, "You're speaking transcendental knowledge. Who are you? You're just walking around as some foolish person, but you're speaking transcendental knowledge." So a whole conversation transpired. And at one stage, the king asked Jad Bharat, said, "How were you able to achieve such an elevated position?" So Jad Bharat told his whole story, but he also said to achieve this position of self-realization, he said, it's not by gyan or speculative knowledge, it's not by tapasya, by severe austerities and penances, it's not by nivapanat, accepting sannyas, it's not by iyaya, by great arrangement for worshipping the deity, or grihat, from ideal householder life, or chandasa, by observing celibacy or studying Vedic literature, or jala agni surayahai, by severe austerity such as keeping oneself in freezing water during the winter, or surrounded by burning fire in the summer sun. But it is only by mahat pararaja abhishekam, by smearing the dust of the lotus feet of the great devotees all over the body. So it's the same message. Jad Bharat is given the same message as Kadama Muni is given. That all these other things, that they can be beneficial, but ultimately, unless we're fully surrendering to the lotus feet of the great souls, the Mahatma, these other things are of limited benefit. And that verse that I just took words out of, paraphrasing, Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the Vedeshu Dulabam Adulabam Atma Bhakto. One cannot attain perfection of spiritual life simply by following the directions of the Vedas. One has to approach a pure devotee. Anyabidasita sunyam jnana kamani anavritam. So somebody who is favourably engaged in devotional service, has given up all karma and gyan, that person can achieve pure devotional service. I might have told the story before sometime, but it's a story that what's his name? He does the tours around Vrindavan, Prabhupada disciple. Bandha, thank you. So he spoke this story in this regard, that even Krishna, because Krishna can just automatically give blessings, it's not difficult for him, but he instructs his devotees to approach the Mahatmas for blessings. So he told this story that the gopis, one time, they approached Krishna for his blessings, and they said, "We want you to be our husband and be able to serve him, to serve you forever and forevermore. This is simply our goal in life, for you to be our husband and be able to love you and serve you forever and forevermore." And Krishna, he just smiled and he said, "Over the other side of Jamuna, Devasa Muni is performing austerities. You should go there and ask him for his blessings, that you can fulfill your desire." So as I said, Krishna, he could have just, "Yes, I give you my blessings," but he was being very instructive that you go to a saintly person, Devasa Muni, and ask for his blessings. So, of course, when you go to see a holy man, a saintly person, you need to take some gifts. So they filled all their baskets up with milk sweets, rasgulla, rasamalai, burfi, laddu, hundreds of milk sweets. And they come to the Jamuna River, but the Jamuna River was completely in flood. There was no way they could cross it. So feeling a little bit disappointed, they went back to Krishna and said, we can't cross the Jamuna. She's completely in flood. So what do we do? And Krishna, he said, "You go back to the Jamuna and you offer a prayer that on the strength of Krishna's brahmachari vows, please allow us to cross the Jamuna." And all the gopis looked at each other. Brahmachari vows? We're all his girlfriends. He's not a brahmachari. Anyway, they were just simple village girls. So they went back to the Jamuna, big long line, holding hands, said, "Please, my dear Jamuna Devi, please allow us to cross." And so immediately Jamuna, she opened up and all the gopis were happily able to cross. And then they came to Devasa Muni's ashram, and he was fully entranced, so they all sort of sat down around him with their baskets of milk sweets. And after some time, Devasa Muni opened his eyes and saw all these beautiful young girls in front of him with all their baskets. And he said, "Yes, how can I help you?" And so the gopis said, "Oh, Master, oh Devasa Muni, please offer us the blessings that we can become, that Krishna can become our husband and to be able to serve him forever and forevermore." And Devasa Muni said, "Yes, you have my blessings." And the gopis said, "What, just like that?" "Yes, you have my blessing. Now what did you bring me?" And so, the girls, the gopis, they come with all their baskets. And while they were sitting there, Devasa Muni was just eating and eating all these hundreds of milk sweets. And finally he'd finished them all and fully satisfied. And he said, "Now you can go back." And so the gopis said, "Okay." And so they went back to the Jamuna, but they forgot that Jamuna was flooded. And they said, "Oh, how do we get across?" So, let's go back to Devasa Muni and ask him, how do we cross back to cross the Jamuna again, back to Krishna. So they went back to Devasa Muni and he said, "Oh, Master, how do we cross Jamuna? She's completely flooded." And Devasa Muni said, "You go back to the Jamuna and you offer the prayer to Jamuna Devi that on the strength of Devasa Muni's vow of subsisting only on the juice of durba grass, may we cross." And so again, the gopis looked at each other. Subsisting on the juice of durba grass, he just ate hundreds of milk sweets. So anyway, the gopis said, look, it's when we were crossing over Jamuna to come to you, she was in flood. And we went back to Krishna, and he said, on the strength of my brahmachari vows, you offer this prayer to the Jamuna. But where are all his girlfriends? Krishna's not a brahmachari. And Devasa Muni smiled and says, when you have that rasa dance, Krishna is surrounded by the most beautiful girls in the universe, but he simply walks away, completely unattached. In that way, Krishna is the perfect brahmachari. So again, the gopis, they're just simple village girls. Okay. So I went back to Jamuna and, lined up, holding hands, offering the prayer that, O Jamuna Devi, on the strength of Devasa Muni's vow, subsisting only on durba grass, please allow us to cross. And immediately Jamuna opened and they were able to cross. And then they come back to Krishna and they sat all around him. And so Krishna said, so what happened? So Devasa Muni, he offered his blessings that we can become you can become our husband and we can serve you forever and forevermore. But they said, well, you have one question, dear Krishna, that to cross back over the flooded Jamuna, Devasa Muni said that you offer the prayer that on the strength of his vow of subsisting only on the grass of the juice of durba grass, could we cross? But he just ate hundreds of our milk sweets. What does this mean? And Krishna smiled and he said that, I'll just get it. There says, yes, said normally he does maintain that vow, but when he has the opportunity to eat delicious prasadam from the Brajabasis, devotees, he will do that. So in this way, gopis were completely satisfied. So the point here is that, even though ultimately Krishna sanctions, if anybody is offering blessings, ultimately a super soul or Krishna is sanctioning those blessings. But he was instructive in this, that he sent his dearmost devotees to a saintly person so they could get the blessings. So this is a lesson that we can learn. And I was sort of interesting about this durba grass. I thought it might have been some ancient Ayurvedic medicine or something. You can actually buy it on eBay. It's an Ayurvedic tonic from durba grass. It's sometimes called Bermuda grass. It's a very dark green, about $100 a litre. It's quite expensive, but it's full of all nutrients and health-giving properties. So, yeah, that was interesting. So this is really the purport of the verse, that we can engage in so many different spiritual religious activities, but ultimately if we're able to be surrendering and serving in the service of the great souls, the pure devotees, the Mahatmas, will ultimately our service receive that full spiritual fruition. So, Krishna, he tells Arjuna that one should always try to approach a spiritual master, render service unto them, inquiring from them, and in this way, one will be able to see the absolute truth through this process, by inquiring submissively, rendering service. This is the system. This is the spiritual system that Krishna has given us. Through the parampara, we see the line of disciplic succession, one spiritual master after the other. The process is the same, that, each one, it's not that we're serving our spiritual master, but, he's just enjoying the fruits of that. He's offering that service to his spiritual master, and one step, one person after the other, eventually it comes to Krishna's lotus feet. So this is our system, that the process of initiation or connection to the disciplic succession is always through serving the lotus feet of the great souls. So Swami Manu, he's appreciating this, that it is my good fortune that I'm able to see you, persons who are bewildered by the material energy are not able to approach your lotus feet, but I'm very fortunate that I've been able to touch your lotus feet with my head. So perhaps I'll end there. Thank you very much. If there's any questions at all, comments? Yes.
Verse.
Yeah.
I was thinking it sounds even a bit like he's approaching Krishna, like the Supreme Lord. It is my good fortune that I have been able to see you, for you cannot easily be seen by persons who have not, you know what I mean? Like he's invisible, but actually the way you explained it was so nice that, and actually from that purport in the Bhagavad Gita, that if our senses are out of control, we can't see what that holy person has to offer.
Yeah. Well, we're not really, the desire isn't going to manifest in the heart to approach a saintly person, you know. So in that sense, they become invisible. They're not part of our life. So, you know, sometimes persons who are new to Krishna consciousness, they say, well, I become a devotee and I lost all my friends, you know. And so an esoteric understanding of that is that those friends can't help you anymore, you know. But you're on a different path, different trajectory. So Krishna, Super Soul, he takes those friends away and gives you a whole new group of friends who are going to help you on that path. In other words, association devotees. Before that desire, that spiritual desire was there, these devotees are invisible, weren't part of our life. But due to our desire changing, the old friends are gone and the new friends are there to help us. You know, Super Soul is making that arrangement. So that's another way of understanding that we can't see the saintly persons because there's no desire there. Yeah.
Even I remember when meeting Srila Prabhupada, at least in my case, my desires weren't so pure that I could even accept even a fraction of what he was offering.
Yeah.
It was so unfortunate.
But obviously there was some sincerity there because you're able to enter into that association. You know, and Prabhupada could see there was some spark there. You know, so, you know, he's like early days Prabhupada was speaking with Tamal Krishna Maharaj, some other devotees that, you know, it's due to past pious activities that you've engaged in devotional service. And Tamal Krishna mentioned that, but Prabhupada, I've never performed any pious activities. And Prabhupada responded, says, I've engaged you in service. I am creating those pious activities. And when you heard me, you came running. So he dismissed, you know, he was sort of lamenting, the devotees were lamenting that engage in so many, you know, degraded, sinful activities. But Prabhupada completely dismissed all that. You heard me and you come running. Therefore you're qualified. So, yeah. Anything else? Yes, sir.
It's very interesting also. We see often with lots of devotees before they come to Krishna consciousness, you know, due to the super soul, that prior meeting the devotees, whether it's a couple of years or 6 months, that they already start to follow the process of Krishna consciousness. Like I speak to a lot of new devotees who have just arrived over the years that I've been here, and a lot of them come and they're already following the 4 regulative principles without even knowing what the 4 regulative principles are. They just know deep within themselves that they should be doing this. I find that very interesting.
Yeah, so we could put it down to past life influence, perhaps.
Yeah.
That there's some piety there. You know, but you know, once you start chanting, even if you haven't really in the association devotees, you know, maybe you got a book and, you know, started reading it, hearing about, you one should chant the Hare Krishna mantra. The Hare Krishna mantra is completely independent. It's not dependent on getting initiation or any other thing. The potency will work. If you're just living by yourself in some apartment somewhere, but you're chanting, you're connected to the holy name. So, and eventually Super Soul may, according to desire, will bring you into the association devotees as you progress. So a very mystical process. And everybody's got their story, how they met devotees, how they took up devotional service. And it's sometimes quite miraculous how it happens. Yeah.
Just one other point. When we're talking about, the certain things that don't matter when it comes to Krishna consciousness, it's the dust from the lotus feet of a Mahatma. But we do find that when one gets the dust of the lotus feet of a Mahatma, those points that we touch there in the Bhagavatam, they kind of automatically follow. They're into, being celibate, worshipping the deities and all this kind of stuff. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, like how to, what brings you to that point, you mean?
Well, it says that none of that matters, getting the dust, but we often find that one who's got the dust and one who's following the Mahatma, they're following those things that don't matter.
Well, you can't really say it doesn't matter, but it's not the most important thing. All these things are like supports, our foundation. But ultimately, we can do all these things, but unless we're serving the great souls, we're not going to get the full benefit of all that. Yeah. Obviously, being on the altar, worshipping the deities, there's going to be some benefit, following all the rules and regulations. But ultimately, unless, the full fruition of these activities is surrendering to the great souls, that's the process that Krishna has given us. So we may, focus on other things and we'll get some benefit to some degree, but ultimately the final conclusion is we need to take shelter of the great souls.
Thank you.
Something unrelated kind of, but somebody had asked me earlier, I was thinking, I've been here for so long, but I still don't have a good answer. How would you answer, why do we say lotus feet, lotus eyes, lotus hands? Why the lotus?
Well, the lotus is considered like the topmost beautiful flower. Like Prabhupada says, the mango is the king of fruits. There's lots of nice fruits, but specifically the mango is given. So the lotus is considered the topmost beautiful, like Krishna says, that nature is a spark, just a spark of my splendor. So the potency of Krishna, of his beautiful, aspect of beauty is represented by the lotus. So therefore, in this way, parts of the body is compared to the lotus. In other words, the lotus is beautiful, so if you compare the feet to the lotus, we're talking about, a very beautiful, attractive feature. Yeah. Yes, Ru. Well, that's there also, yeah.
There's also a verse in the teachings of Queen Kunti, Nama Panktanabhaya, Nama Panktamalane, where it's describing how his navel is shaped like a lotus, his eyes are like the petals of lotus. Namaste Pankajangraye. He's said to have lotus feet because his feet are engraved with lotuses. So these marks are also there on his body.
Yeah, so literally and figuratively, the lotus is used.
There must be some scientific, how the lotus is also like a perfect flower in a sense, the patterns or something. I'd imagine there would be. I don't know, I don't know where I heard it sometime, but like the Fibonacci or the there's a pattern.
It also mentions, Prabhupada describes, also mentioned in the Bhagavatam, how the lotus, it always rises up above the water, and it's never touched by the water. So that analogy is also used to indicate how Krishna is above everything else. And also the saintly person's lotus feet, etc., above everything else.
Yeah. And also, while it's not in contact with the water, there's a special texture or film on the lotus flower, you get a drop of water. The flower doesn't actually get wet. The water will just, fall off. So sometimes that analogy is used that the saintly person comes into the material world but is not affected by the material energy in the same way that the lotus doesn't become dampened by the water. So, lots of analogies and you can use for the lotus. Okay, thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.